Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 55, and we are live with the man of the hour, the guy who basically took Zcash and decided that he wants to take it to the moon and is anticipating that the price will be determined in zillions. And yeah, he came up with a lot of smart memes, which I think are very powerful and are gonna stick. And we're here to talk about whether or not this is organic and what's going on. It's good to have you on, Mert.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me.
So, where do we start this? First of all, if anyone wants to ask a question, I put this. So basically, Zcash has this messaging layer where you can send encrypted text messages with your transactions. You can send zero in terms of amount, but you pay the transaction fee and you send a message. And for this episode, if you want to ask questions, you have this. It's here. This QR code here, you scan it, you send your question, and that's one way to increase the anonymity set of Zcash because it has this quality that it adds up for every time someone sends a transaction, and also make this productive. So, Mert, what's your story with Zcash? You're known as this Solana guy.
Sure. Well, it actually is related to Solana. So in 2024 summer, early summer, maybe even spring, I had a few friends reach out to get my opinion on this thing called Project Tachyon that Sean Bo was working on. And it is, roughly speaking, a project to scale Zcash. And obviously with Solana, I have a lot of experience with scale at varying levels of the stack. I also run Helios, which is an infrastructure company for Solana. And so they basically just wanted my opinion on it. I took a look. I even got Tolly involved, who is, obviously one of the best minds in the world, I would say, on scale, especially on blockchains. And we actually even had Sean and Zuko on at that time. I had a podcast called Lightspeed, and I brought those two plus Tolly on the podcast to discuss ideas. And as I kept looking at Tachyon, I obviously had to keep doing more work to look into other parts of Zcash and how does it work? What are the weaknesses? What are the strengths? Where could it go? All these different things. And basically convinced myself that this thing is extremely promising, but the story has not really been told properly. And there's a lot of latent potential that has not been realized. But with the right sequence and effort and talent, I think that at that time I thought this can definitely be turned around, along with a few other smart people who thought so at the time and still do. And that was basically how I first found out about it.
Yeah, so just for the record, to get this out of the way from the beginning, are you getting paid to promote Zcash? Because I read from some Monero account that we're supposed to get paid like $700 per tweet. And I'm like, man, I should be very rich now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not. Like, first of all, $700, like, please, that's just not gonna, like, there's no amount of money that you can give somebody, probably in my position is the right framing here, to tweet about stuff. Like, you're not gonna pay me money. I'll just say whatever I want. I bought on the public market like everybody else. The same thing that I did for Solana, right? When I came onto Solana, people think I'm like some Solana elite, quote unquote. But it's like, look, I was working at Coinbase. I had barely any money, and I just bought as much as I could at $8 while having student debt. That's how I got into Solana, right? Nobody from Solana paid me. I started a company on it on my own with my friends and with my co-founders. And it's the same thing with Zcash, which is to say, like, if I wanted to pump and dump something, I think there's much easier ways to do that, right? Where you actually can just bundle a coin with supply on some launchpad. It would be pretty inefficient to do it via just buying a token on centralized exchanges, or now you can buy it up via near intents and stuff. But it just doesn't make any sense. It seems like it's the expression of some very deep salt that these people possess.
It is a bit funny. Like, they have so many of these narratives that they're framing, and they're trying to make it look less legit, and they're saying, oh, there's a bunch of VCs, there's the state of Israel or whatever that's behind this. And supposedly we're just a bunch of paid shills or pawns or whatever in their game of chess. And it's so silly. Like, when you read it and you know what's going on, and you know that everyone has genuine conviction for this, and they do understand that this was supposed to be Bitcoin and it didn't turn out to be. In a parallel universe, maybe, that this is Bitcoin and this is what it looks like with the shielded transactions and the very good cryptography and the smartest minds working on it. But it's not. And we have to adapt to this reality where privacy is necessary. And I don't know why anyone would think. I have a very hard time understanding this, because from the average Monero bro perspective, just when their price was gonna pump, the evil VCs and the state of Israel came up with this Zcash pump to take away the steam from the Monero movement, to make it look like, they're the main character, obviously, of this whole story, and nobody else should exist on the market. And obviously, we're just trying to take away the spotlight, just so people get confused and waste some time of their life looking at this instead of looking at the real hero of the story. And to be honest, I don't have such a bad opinion of Monero. I just think that their community has some of the worst people, which is why I sold my bag. I don't want to get associated with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, to me, obviously I'm relatively newer, I would say, to that whole, let's say, tribalism between Zcash and Monero. I thought it was extremely stupid that they became tribal against Zcash, because as we were seeing play out, the Zcash going up actually helped all privacy projects in the sector. Like, Monero went up. So did all these ZK coins, so did all these privacy coins. So, like, it's so short-sighted to think of it as my privacy is better than your privacy. Like, first of all, it objectively is not. Like, if you just look at the math, if you just look at the engineering of the system, if you even look at the roadmap that needs to compensate for this, we know this is not the case. Now, one has better network effects, one has better technical stuff. So, like, there's trade-offs at both ends. But that said, it's and I keep trying to, like, encode this in a shorter message, which is like, privacy is, in my view, the last remaining PvE, right? Where it's not like you're not fighting against each other, you're fighting against the environment, which is like the state of surveillance and like erosion of rights and the loss of liberty and all these different things. And you can, by using cryptography to build these autonomous systems to help people, you can elevate everybody at the same time, right? Like, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, well, this is all kumbaya and there's like no competition. Sure, there's competition, but let's make the competition honest, right? Like, calling it Israel coin is just like, what does that even mean? It's open source. Look at the code. Like, that is that not what engineers do? Anyway, I'm not. Again, I think there's probably some reasonable people on that side as well. I'm just not super familiar with them. But I do think overall, most people who are legitimate cypherpunks, or at least people who are still in crypto for its ideals, right, for using cryptography, encryption, open source code to actually build these systems, I think most of them are pretty happy and joined together in helping improve the state of privacy, and not just crypto, but even other systems like Signal.
Yeah, and at the same time, I did see this meme, I think it was yesterday, with the Zcash marketing team, and it was just a picture of the European Commission meeting. And I did read the news about the CBDC that's coming to the Eurozone by 2029, I guess. We're gonna get this invention, which supposedly is modern and cool and gives you privacy for small amounts, but otherwise keeps track of all your savings. And there were rumors that I don't think it was even a rumor. It was a document that mentioned that you shouldn't have savings that add up to more than 3,000 digital euro, and people will get taxed more for that or whatever. Like, it's very messed up. And I guess this is sort of the main narrative and what we're really fighting against. And the reason why this is accelerating and getting more traction is sort of preemptive for the stuff which is obviously happening, and it would be foolish to ignore.
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret that Europe has gradually become more and more draconian in policy on roughly all fronts, but especially in terms of monetary policy. I mean, there's no secret here. I mean, you can point to all sorts of things about immigration and whatever politics. I'm not necessarily interested in that, but it is objective reality that, for example, if you look at France, France has been pretty bad for crypto on a lot of fronts, right? Global taxation, wealth tax, taxing you for just holding crypto, arresting Pavel, all these kidnappings of executives and finger cutting, and it's just not. So we went to Proof of Talk, which is in Paris, and I felt much unsafer there than anywhere else I've been in the past year. And that's Paris. And I've been to like 30, 40 different places this year. And Paris somehow felt the least safe, which is impressive, because it's like, okay, you're getting all these taxes, or you're proposing them. Where exactly are they going? Right? Like this. And I don't want to present privacy in this secretive way. Like, it's privacy isn't necessarily about like hiding stuff or breaking stuff. It's like the individual having a choice in, hey, I'm doing such and such, I just don't want to disclose it to everybody on earth. And it's giving you the choice, the right, and the normalness of, this is, I'm an individual, I'm a citizen, I'm a person with rights, and I think you are being unfair, you're not obeying the law, all these different things. And it's this one little tool that you have, quite a strong one, to actually ensure that you are being treated fairly. And Europe, and like, I don't want to paint Europe as this homogenous place, but because I'm sure there's some regions in Europe that are a bit more friendly than others, and some that are much worse than others. But in my experience, the relative direction that they've been going towards has been a pretty bad one.
I agree. And it's very hard to be optimistic when you take a look at what's happening, except that we actually have good technology that we can use to fight against this. Once again, I wish this was Bitcoin. And I do have to ask you, since this is a Bitcoin podcast, do you have a story with Bitcoin? Like when you discovered it, or when you bought your first ones? Or are you part of the generation? Because I saw you turn 30 a couple of weeks ago, or last week. I don't remember exactly. Happy birthday, by the way. And I suppose there's a bunch of younger people who came into the space and didn't care about Bitcoin at all. And I'm not sure if you're part of that generation or that wave of adoption.
So I feel like I mid-cured Bitcoin quite a bit. I heard about it first in university, which was, I guess, 12 years ago now, or maybe this would have been 10 years ago specifically. And at this time, Ethereum had already existed. I didn't know when Bitcoin first came out. I was a little too young for when it first came out. But I did so I was taking math. So I'm a math major, and engineering major as well. And I was taking little cryptography courses. And so right around that time, I started hearing about Ethereum and how you could build these different smart contracts. And at the time, it seemed, I made a few mistakes. One is that I thought that you would need to basically have a PhD in order to do anything meaningful with crypto, because the place that I was at was very highly academic towards crypto and from a cryptography lens, right? So all these professor types. And then my friends, my co-founder actually was a Zcash miner, which I didn't know, by the way. I found out recently. And my friends would mine and participate in this stuff, and some of them actually ended up being some of the early folks at MakerDAO or Nansen. But I was always in this weird state of mind where I was like, I hate money people. I'm not gonna look at investments. I don't care about your money stuff. I'm just gonna work on cool robotics shit. Right? I was one of those. And then funny enough, after I graduated, I actually ended up working at a bank for cybersecurity. And basically I kept working at different banks and then fintechs until really around 2019, 2018. I got fed up with how ridiculous those systems were because I was building them and I was like, these systems are extremely shit. And so I was like, why don't people use Bitcoin more? And then I started looking more into Bitcoin again. So I bought some at that point, and then I got job offers from both Kraken and Coinbase, and then I ended up joining Coinbase. And then, as I got more involved with crypto, I made the same mid-curve mistake that most, I would assume, engineer types make, which is this thing doesn't do anything. It's not programmable. It's just there. It's inefficient. Proof of work doesn't make sense. All these different things. I'm going to go to Ethereum. And then actually, oh no, I'm going to go to Solana, right? Because I want to program, I want to create, I want to build apps, all these different things. And basically, I think everybody goes through this, or most engineer types go through this, and then you're like, wait a minute, Bitcoin actually still is much better than all these different things because it doesn't do anything. So there's much less things that can go wrong. There's much fewer surface area for complexity and errors and all these different things. And so it's not correct to think of, Solana and Ethereum as being better than Bitcoin. That's not the right frame. The frame is that Bitcoin is just way different. It's like comparing Robinhood stock to gold. It's like they're just not comparable things. Any serious investor probably has both, right? So basically, that was when I started changing my mind on it a few years ago.
Listening to that, it's hard to tell which one of us is the Bitcoin maximalist, because I'm sort of the jaded and hateful, and I don't know if hateful is a good word, but a bit spiteful guy who's disappointed with where Bitcoin is heading. And you're this guy who comes from basically outside of Bitcoin but watches it with some degree of admiration.
I'm not a big holder by any means. I mean, my largest holdings are by far Solana and Zec, and like startups and stuff like this. So, but the thing is, Bitcoin, I respect it a lot. And so even though there's some weird stuff I've seen about the certain debates that are happening, and how political it's gotten, I think one of the things that I hope to achieve, or at least help influence in the future, is like by elevating Zcash to do much better, become much bigger. Bitcoin actually gets a little nervous and adds privacy to the L1, right? So like that would be a net win for crypto and everybody that uses these systems.
Yeah, I agree. But I think along your journey, you have to decide if you're a cypherpunk, if you're an Austrian economist, or if you're just someone who follows whoever they stumble upon and thinks is very smart, because there's millions of these people. If you're a cypherpunk, you're just going to use the best tool for the job, and you're going to be pretty agnostic about what you're actually using for transactions. You're going to build smart contracts wherever you find it more convenient or you have all the features you want. You're going to transact with privacy on the network that fits your actual use case. And you're going to save in whatever it is that you think is interesting. If you're an Austrian economist, you're more likely to develop this mindset of digital gold and have this dogma that there can be only one and that the supply has to be limited. Like, as a cypherpunk, you don't care too much. You care about scarcity, of course, but you don't care too much about fixed supply and stuff like this. It doesn't make much sense. You just want the system to work in the way that you need it to work. But as an Austrian economist, you're going to be obsessed with this idea, well, unlike gold, this has fixed supply and there will never be more than 21 million coins. And then when something else like Zcash comes along, you're going to watch it and be like, yeah, I can understand this is useful, but it seems to be an attack on Bitcoin because it dilutes what these 21 million coins could be worth, and all that capital that's being invested in Zcash could have come to Bitcoin. So that's the kind of mentality that you're going to embrace. And if you're just a follower of whoever is smart and you met in person or you read their book or you follow on Twitter, I guess you're gonna be a mixed bag. I guess the best kind of advice I can give to people who are just lemmings in this journey is to not put all your eggs in one basket, I guess. Not trust someone too much because nobody really knows what's happening. Nobody has a view of the whole picture. And it's very easy to fall down a rabbit hole which pretends to be absolute and gives you all the answers, when in fact these people are clueless and very ignorant.
Yeah,
Like,
well said.
would you call yourself a cypherpunk? You did study cryptography. You do write code.
Yeah, that is an interesting question, because I don't necessarily want to disrespect them by assuming I'm one of them. I am obviously an engineer. I write code, and I got into math because I enjoy number theory and cryptography. So these are all things I really like doing, and they're just generally interesting to me. But I don't know. I'm wary of labeling myself anything. I'd rather leave the labeling to other people to give to me, and they can decide what they think I should be labeled based on what they perceive. Internally, the way I think of myself is just as a founder, or as somebody who likes building things. Like, I just like creating things that didn't exist, and also telling stories that I think are interesting.
That's fair. And for the record, you get credited for getting Solana to triple digit prices. And now you also get credit for building some of the best memes and narratives for helping Zcash get more attention. And I think it's really beautiful, the way in which you combine your engineering work with your storytelling. You don't find much of this in our space. It's almost like you have to be either or.
Yeah, I think that's I do try to tell because I don't think I'm particularly good at either one. Like, I'm not the best storyteller. I'm also not the best engineer, but it's not so difficult to combine them if you just have some interests in both of them. And I used to say that what the world needs really is another Richard Feynman, which is to say somebody who makes science engaging and fun for other people to learn from. And I was like, actually, that could be interesting for crypto as well. And Andreas used to do that a lot for Bitcoin. And I feel like more of those types, anybody could be those types. It's just like a lot of engineers tend to neglect the need for communication because they think it's like this bizarre concept, it's suits and then salespeople. But it's like, it is the most human thing there is, right? The ability to be able to articulate whatever thoughts you have in your mind into something that other people can learn from is the most human thing there is. That is why language exists. And so I do hope more of my engineer friends take that pill and try communicating more with the outside world.
Now, listening to you and comparing your speech with your tweets, I do realize that either you're not putting any effort into your tweets and they're just, I guess, appealing to a very low common denominator, or else you actually think about it a lot and just make it very simple. But there's like the way in which you basically end your tweets with Shalom, or you just tweet Zillions or something like this. It's engaging, it works, but at the same time, when you talk to the person, you're nothing like that.
Yeah, I like being unpredictable. Otherwise, I get bored and I stop doing the thing. And so, like, the most important thing is that I need to entertain myself. Otherwise, I just won't do it. And so, yeah, sometimes I'll just shitpost, troll, and completely try to play clown. Sometimes I'll post like big research pieces. So, like, it really depends on the mood. Or like sometimes I'll be CEO mood, etc. Like, it really just it depends on the coffee, honestly, that I had for that day.
I also want to point out that you popularized the sidelined meme, which I think is the most powerful, and also ZECtober. And right now, I guess we entered Zevember, or whatever it is that we're gonna call it. And next up, we have ZECtember, which is actually very convenient.
I didn't make those ones. I basically just said, look, just put Z in front of everything. And then
Yeah,
people
Zolana.
actually, yeah. I think that's like, because I did that a bunch of times for Solana. Like Solana people will be familiar with like only possible on Solana, which we used to call OPAS, or like IBRL, increased bandwidth reduced latency. Like those acronyms are actually quite powerful and necessary for the ideas to propagate beyond just the core team.
Yeah. Something else that I did notice about your activity is that you're basically trying to get Zcash listed on various DeFi platforms. Like you're actively negotiating to get more of these DeFi platforms to accept Zcash, which I think is incredible. I think as a use case, the market for this is immense and very liquid, as opposed to just relying on people selling goods and services on the internet. Just making Zcash the intermediary coin where people basically store value temporarily and break the link between their trades, I think this is very smart. Like, where did this start, and what are some of the breakthroughs that you have made?
Well, at first I was annoyed that I need to use a centralized exchange to buy a privacy coin. I was like, this doesn't actually make sense. I mean, it makes sense in the sense that you can on-ramp and then withdraw, but like, why is that even necessary? I don't like using exchanges in general. And there's obviously near intents, which are a great addition along with Zashi. And basically I thought, I mean, there's a few things here. One is that I want to be able to use decentralized exchanges, and like if Solana is the decentralized NASDAQ, then it should have the best assets and give you the best price discovery for those assets. And so the fact that I can only get ZEC on like Binance or Near just didn't make sense to me. So I was like, okay, we need to actually bring Solana. So there's now the Near bridge and there's the Zenrock bridge. So there's two bridges that are useful for ZEC. And then we're also adding light clients. And this is a really important part, because like the way I framed it is that I want Solana to be the internet's market, and then I want Zcash to be the internet's Swiss vault, right? And so what I mean by that is you can keep your stuff shielded in ZEC, in Zcash, but then if you generate a proof saying you hold something, you should be able to trustlessly mint something on something like a Solana and use that for, you know, maybe you borrow against it, right? Maybe you borrow against it to buy something, or maybe you borrow against it to pay for something. Or maybe there's a ZEC-backed stablecoin that's over-collateralized or something, right? There's all sorts of different things you can do with it, right? Because the entire point of a store of value asset is that the asset is useful, right? Like it can't just do nothing. Otherwise, why would people use it? Or like, why would people go into it? But and then I made the other meme, which is like, you know, Solana for offense, Zcash for defense, which is to say, like, you can just take some profits or whatever and then just put it in Zcash where nobody will see them, where it's comfortable, where it's safe, where it's you don't have to disclose anything to anybody, and then you can just make cross-chain payments from like that control panel with Zashi wallet. And it's like that's one of the first times where I've used crypto and I was like, okay, this is exactly what we were supposed to do, which is like have a private repo here and then use it across chains as needed for whatever, you know, the commercial or the financial activity that you need is. You know, in the future, you can imagine a world where the admin is not so friendly towards crypto, and so the exchange is all delist SEC. Well, then what? Well, back then you would have been fucked, but now you have DeFi. You have all these decentralized blockchains, right? Solana now, Near, but then you're also gonna have Hyperliquid. You're gonna have all these chains, Ethereum, etc., where you can still get ZEC, and it cannot be stopped anymore.
Something that I really want to ask you is whether or not you see a paradox between your support for Solana, which is super open and also more centralized, and Zcash, which is trying to be more cypherpunk and also has this shielded layer on it, which allows you to have very good transaction privacy. Like, don't you see like a discrepancy between the two sides?
I see it as a barbell, right? Which is to say, they are. It's kind of like like the way I think of it is like, it's kind of like asking or thinking about like when you're eating food, like, is this spoon paradoxical to this fork? It's like, I use the spoon for drinking soup. I use the fork for eating things like, I don't know, what pasta, something like this, right? And so, which is to say, there's obviously some overlap in that they're both blockchains, but they are just so different in their eventual vision and aim that, like, for example, Solana wants ZEC to be tradable on Solana because it's an exchange in some sense. It's a giant marketplace of assets, versus ZEC just cares about the privacy aspect and the security aspect. And then I would say, like, again, it's very similar to, in my view, the gold versus like Robinhood stock kind of thing, right? Which is to say, like, I view Solana more like a tech stock, like a growth platform, like a Robinhood, but with much greater scale because it's a network. And then I think about Zcash more like some digital equivalent of gold, but with actually better properties. And I do think, and this is not specific to ZEC, like we also do this with Bitcoin. Like, if the Solana thesis is correct, it should in theory be the best place to trade Bitcoin as well. And which is actually why I think and I don't want to generalize too much, but this is also why, if you saw Sasha and Zuko's post, like, the Ethereum guys tend to be a little less easygoing about the ZEC thing than the Solana guys, because the ETH guys kind of see it as competition in some sense, right? Because they're also trying to be like the store of value in some sense, or money. Whereas Solana guys don't even try that. We're just like, look, this is an exchange, this is a marketplace, this is the NASDAQ. You should be able to trade things here, and we'll make money on execution fees. So it's like completely complementary in that sense.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you this because I think you're the first Solana guy that I interview. And someone that I really respect and was on the show is the CEO of Bitrefill. He's selling these gift cards in exchange for your coins. And he described Solana very beautifully and said that it's basically something that has nothing to do with Bitcoin, was born out of a necessity that is its own thing. And he called it like a post-maximalist invention. And I wanted to ask you, how would you define Solana in comparison to Ethereum? But before that, let me plug a couple of ads because it's been 30 minutes and I have to do it. SideShift is the place where you can actually swap Bitcoin for Solana if you're into that, or Solana into Bitcoin. The URL is SideShift.ai, SIDESHIFT.ai. And they have pretty good liquidity, low fees. And basically, the way in which I recommended, I said this Solana case particularly because we have a Solana guest. They don't support Zcash, unfortunately, yet, I think. And basically, I think the best way in which I recommend people to use it is when someone wants to pay you in stable coins and you want to receive Bitcoin or maybe Solana, you just enter the address to which you want to receive the payment on SideShift, and you send the address where they're supposed to send the stable coins from SideShift to the person paying you, and there's gonna be a swap. You get what you want without all the friction. It's pretty cool, low fees, good liquidity. Check it out, SideShift. There is also Layer 2 Labs, which coincidentally has a side chain for Bitcoin, which is called ZSide and emulates the technology from Zcash. Basically, the goal of Layer 2 Labs is to create drive chains for every interesting use case in crypto. And they have a sidechain for Ethereum, one for Zcash, one for big block Bitcoin that's prunable, and a lot of interesting stuff. The goal is to have like 256, I think, maximum sidechains that can be built around Bitcoin. And now the software is running on the Signet, so you can run it at layer2labs.com/download. And see if this technology is interesting to you and something that you would like to see in Bitcoin in the future. So check it out, Layer 2 Labs, really cool. Paul Stortz, very smart guy. Listen to the interview with him. Anyway, I'll hand it to you now, Mert. Tell me, how would you describe this difference between Ethereum and Solana?
Well, I would say there's quite a few differences, but I think Solana is very misunderstood, and people have a lot of low resolution, lazy thinking on how to define it. But roughly speaking, Solana tries to be a sci-fi computer in some sense that is the engine of all future finance. So the way to think of it is you shouldn't need all these different silos and walled gardens on Earth for price discovery and finance and trading. You can actually concentrate them all in one giant liquidity hub, and then that will get you the best prices for all assets, right? It's, you know, like one way to think of it is like, you take DVDs, you put them on the internet, you get Netflix. You take brick and mortar storefronts, you put them on the internet, you get Shopify, Amazon. With Solana, it's like you take markets and you put them in the internet age and you get Solana. And that everything is optimized around low latency and syncing data in an uncensorable way around the world as fast as physics allows, right? That's Solana. It's not like, and people will say things like, oh, like it's centralized. It's like, well, if you actually look at the numbers, the stake distribution, the geographical distribution, all these different things, is extremely resilient. Like you would have to attack many different continents at the same time, owned by many different people in many different data centers and many different hosting providers and all these different things to be able to take Solana down in terms of as an adversary. So it's it optimizes for information around the world, but the information is financial. That's really the best way. Ethereum is you know, I don't want to necessarily talk about Ethereum too much because like I might misrepresent what they're trying to do, but Ethereum does try to be a few different things at once. Like it tries to be a store of value. It tries to be, you know, sound money. It tries to be a smart contract platform, and then also tries to be like the settlement hub for L2s and stuff. So it like there's a bunch of different things that it is trying to do, which I don't think I'm an expert to really weigh in on. But Solana just tries to do one thing, which is like global information syncing with finance. And we have a very strong belief that this needs to be all done on one blockchain and at the L1 level, because otherwise what you end up with is something like the L2 roadmap for Ethereum, where you end up offloading critical trust assumptions and value leakage to the L2s, where the L2s are making much more money than the L1, which makes it such that the incentives at the L1 between the L2s are super skewed. And there's also trust assumptions, right? You have to trust the L2 to not censor you. So anyway, but like I do think they're quite different, and so there's room for both of them.
Yeah, I think the Ethereum people would characterize Solana as a nihilistically centralized version of Ethereum, which tries to scale everything on layer 1. But I do believe that, I think I tried Solflare last year when someone wanted to send me their random meme coin. I think the user experience for that is something that needs to be studied, because Ethereum wrapped everything in layers of complexity, and you have to open various applications and whatever. In the case of Solana wallets, it's much simpler. And there's a reason why all of this meme coin mania that happened last year and earlier this year took place on Solana, because it's just so simple. Anyone can figure it out. Pump.fun was an interesting phenomenon. Like before this, you actually had to deploy some code to write something, maybe copy it from somewhere else and change the parameters, but you still had to be somewhat savvy to know what you're doing on Ethereum. But with Solana, it was commodified to the point where anyone could do this very easily.
Yeah. I mean, for crypto to be useful, it has to be usable, and that's you just have to make it scale, right? Like I think it's not, and I don't like the centralization stuff. Doesn't like it's just technically incoherent when they say that. You can say if you're going to use just the L1 for Ethereum, and then compare it to just the L1 for Solana, you can say Ethereum is more decentralized, right? That's correct. But like you can't say it's for free. Like you do give up usability and $100 fees, and then you, most importantly, you offload the centralization point to the L2s, right? Like this isn't a theoretical. 2 weeks ago, AWS went down. And the leading Ethereum L2 went down, right? Like you can't necessarily comment on centralization in that
Which one is
case.
that? Which is the leading one?
Base.
Oh, I was thinking Arbitrum, but I guess I'm stuck in the past.
Yeah, I think Arbitrum is fine. I didn't. Anyway, like it's not this knock on L2s or Ethereum or anything like this. It's just that there are trade-offs to be made, but the trade-off isn't that one is centralized and one is decentralized. The trade-offs are like, let's say one is 90% decentralized and the other is 80% decentralized, right? It's relatively speaking, it's not like a 0 and 1.
Yeah, but still, Vitalik, for example, would jump into the conversation and be like, well, I can run an Ethereum node on my Dell XPS 17, and for a Solana node, you're gonna need like a data center or server-grade computer.
Yeah, that also doesn't work because, well, there's two different ways to look at it. One is like the purpose of a blockchain is to verify information, because actually, if you look at Vitalik's blog post Endgame, where he talks about blockchain architectures, he says in the future, all block packing, all block production will be done by specialized centralized entities. And you can see this today, by the way. Ethereum, 2 entities make up 95% of the blocks, okay? 2 of them. However, you can verify the chain such that you can verify that nothing bad was done. It's kind of the same thing with like Bitcoin and Zcash, where like these large mining pools produce and mine a lot of the blocks, but you can verify what's happening, right? You don't have to trust. And so that's actually the same thing with Solana, which is to say, look, you're not going to be able to run a Solana node at home unless you have, 10 gigabytes per second internet, which like some people do, like I do actually. So I actually can run one, but I'm not like everybody, right? However, with a small light client, I can verify what's happening on Solana, right? So I can't like necessarily propose a block. Even, I mean, like we do run the biggest validator, so like my company can. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions about why you need commodity home hardware. It's not for producing blocks. It's about verifying that somebody didn't pull something funny on you. And with ZK, right, one of the great mechanisms of ZK is that somebody can just do anything and use these powerful proving or verifying proving machines, and then you can just verify the proof with relatively simple stuff.
There's someone in the chat who's saying that the sound is cutting off continuously, and I just want to verify if everything is fine. It seems like everyone else is reacting to what we're saying, but this one guy said that the sound is cutting out. On my end, it seems fine. There are no dropped frames. I don't know. Live stream stuff. I do want to ask you at this point, like, if someone came up to you and wanted you to explain to them, first of all, why you like Zcash so much. So I got confirmation that the sound is fine, which is good. First of all, why you like Zcash, and how would you present Zcash to someone who's completely new and maybe that saw that the price went up and they became interested?
So why I like Zcash is I mean, in some sense, it embodies why I got into crypto. It's encrypted, unstoppable internet money. It's money that cannot be taken from me. It's unruggable. It is cryptography used to give liberty to the individual. That's my personal reason. Now, how I would explain it to people, it really depends on, and I actually get asked this a lot, but I first need to understand who that person is. Like, are they a 5-year-old? Are they a 10-year-old? Are they an engineer? Are they a salesman? But generally, what I would say is it is gold, right? I mean, the good thing about Zcash is you can use all the same Bitcoin things, which is add the word private or secret, right? So you can say it's digital gold, that's private, right? You can say it's internet money, that's encrypted. You can say secret Bitcoin. You can you can say internet native money. There's all these different things ways you can describe it. You can get a little poetic. You can be like this, thermodynamic money at planetary scale. Like, it just depends who you're talking to.
I think one of my favorite memes in which you compare Bitcoin to Zcash is that if Bitcoin is digital gold, then Zcash is digital Switzerland.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like if I'm talking to, let's say a high net worth individual, has like a nice Tom Ford suit or something, I'd be like, look, this is the new Swiss vault, right? You don't have to go to Switzerland anymore. You don't have to do all these weird things. This is actually just where you store your wealth. Or like if I'm talking to an engineer or like an internet geek, I'd be like, Bitcoin is HTTP, this is HTTPS, right? There's so many fun different ways to frame it that gets a lot of people angry.
I've also said this to Zuka when he was on my show, and I told him that I've had this idea for like 6 months now, and it's been obsessing me at times that I think Bitcoin in some ways in terms of development is a dead end. I don't think we're gonna get anything significant on it. And just in case something goes bad, basically you can take Zcash as a technology and fork it and copy the UTXO set of Bitcoin because they're very similar in terms of architecture and design, and have like a Noah's Ark for Bitcoiners in which if you hold Bitcoin, you can claim your shielded Bitcoin or whatever in this new chain, which is encrypted by default. And maybe, let's say, you can also make it proof of stake so that everyone running a node can get like a small percentage of the rewards. And it can be like a Swiss bank account for all Bitcoin holders. And anyone can claim their coins. It's going to have this quote unquote fair launch because you're not really creating any tokens out of free air. Thin air, not free air. You're just reissuing something which already exists on a different network. And it can be interesting. It's just that the culture in Bitcoin is so messed up that if you came up with something like this and you introduced it to them and said, hey, it's free money, they would call you a shitcoiner, inflationist, or whatever. They would say, well, it's not legitimate. You're not, just go to Bcash or whatever.
Yeah, I have noticed a lot of counterproductive discourse by certain quote unquote Bitcoin people. I actually hesitate to call them Bitcoin people in general. They seem much more interested in other ideals that are not necessarily crypto native, like basically just rent extracting. I did find it super weird, especially in the earlier times where the holders of like a $3 trillion coin would be so mad at a $3 billion coin. Especially when like the origins of Bitcoin and its direction and everything was very Zcash aligned, right? Like if somebody was doing Solana much better than Solana, for example, that would make me happy. I'm not sure why would it's like, look, this is great. Now we can compete or something, or like now we can make sure we're not in a place where we're stagnant. And so, but I don't think it's a homogenous group. I do think there are obviously still many talented, smart, first principles thinkers in the Bitcoin community. I do think the loudest ones tend to be the ones who are like populist versions of these and not necessarily crypto native people, which is unfortunate, but like, I think those people will attract those types of people anyway, and then they'll kind of just play their little game of idiocracy.
Which is very unfortunate for the record. Like, I'm so disappointed. When I first got into Bitcoin, I was talking to the smartest people I've ever met who were teaching me a bit about everything. And I've learned about monetary history, monetary theory, cryptography, computer science. Like, it seemed like such a deep rabbit hole, and there was so much to learn. And then we just got to this point where I guess since Michael Saylor landed on the scene, the discourse sort of tried to appeal to the lowest common denominator, and it just became about, well, you never sell your Bitcoin. Like, okay, how does that even work? How do you eat if supposedly you're all in on Bitcoin? Well, you take a loan from a bank against your Bitcoin. And I'm like, I thought we were supposed to replace those. No, but they're actually very good. Like, they give you interest and then you pay with your credit card. And I'm like, I thought we were supposed to replace credit cards. Oh no, those are actually nice. They have network effects. You can't beat that. But Bitcoin is for savings. And it's demoralizing when you spend a lot of time hoping that you're going to be part of this revolution and you're going to revolutionize payments and you're going to replace the dollar or something like this. And then you just end up with a stock, basically, which is supposed to make you more dollars, and that's the sole purpose of it, at least in the common narrative, which is being presented to the public. It's really, really disappointing. It hurts. At least I guess Solana never had this kind of identity crisis, like you guys knew from the beginning what you're doing. And also Zcash, maybe that they did have an identity crisis, but now with their more prominent role in DeFi, it's more obvious why this is needed and why this is a valuable asset.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Bitcoin was the earliest, and so it had the highest concentration of talent at some point. But then as more things come out, talent flows to where they're most intellectually curious. And so people who would have stuck around in Bitcoin now go to alternatives or stay in Bitcoin, right, depending on their interests. But like, for example, if Bitcoin was the only thing that was around when I got in, that's also what I would have been focused on. But, I found Solana, I found Ethereum, and I was like, these things to me are more interesting because that's just what I naturally gravitate towards. However, but now I think we neglected certain parts of crypto, which such as privacy. And it's like, okay, now I can also combine my interest in Solana with Zcash. And also privacy on Solana, by the way, right? Like, it's like, these things are, I do really think that privacy is the last PvE in crypto.
And I agree with that. And last year, after I came back from Nashville, which was this very corporate conference where Trump spoke, and
Oh, I was there.
yeah, it was so disappointing. I was like, okay, this is not the same Bitcoin that I joined. And then I went back home and I realized I have to do something about it. So I sold. I didn't sell. I swapped part of my Bitcoin for privacy coins, and I built basically this index of 5 coins, which I believed were going to outperform Bitcoin. And I was so right. Like, I was wrong with a couple of them, of course, but the 3 of them that actually outperform Bitcoin are pretty strong now. And I think Zcash has the best performance, which is amazing. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm happy this is happening.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's day one. We're going to keep going.
I mean, who is they?
No, we're going to keep going, as in like everybody. Like, there's a new hackathon I'm putting together called Cypherpunk. Great judges, Kobe, Balaji, Toli, Zuko, Eli, Sean, Ilya. Minor decentralization is getting better. Sean's working on Project Tachyon. There's more interest coming. Zashi's improving. So, like, really just getting started. I think people seem to think it's like a meta or some move, and it's like, look, I can't predict what happens to the price, obviously, in any short-term time horizon, but I do know there's going to be a lot of new things built that will help elevate privacy, security, scale, and also awareness for all this stuff.
On the topic of the price, I did promise in a tweet that I was gonna do, the Zcash dance if we get to $400, and right now we're not. And yesterday we were, but I had no live stream yesterday. So I guess I will just hold this for the moment when we're actually above $400. Now it's at 395.52, which is still amazing, but it's not 400. So I'm sorry, guys, you have to wait for that. You received about 4 messages as shielded messages using the Zcash messaging feature. I'm gonna read them out to you, but before that, I gotta present 2 more ads. So, noans.com. I guess if you're in Dubai, you must have met Ray Youssef. Or maybe not.
I don't know.
He's this big guy. He's like 6'4", very muscular. He speaks like a wrestler from WWE. But his mission is to fight the forces of evil and onboard the global south onto Bitcoin. And I guess he also supports privacy coins nowadays. And his platform is called Noons, which is noones.com. And if you're trading on Noons, they have a peer-to-peer market. They have a spot market. They even have a debit card if you're into that. And basically all the coins that you put in there are gonna get bought and traded by citizens of the global south. A lot of users are from Nigeria, a lot of them are from the Middle East. There are also users from Latin America. and you're gonna help them basically bootstrap this economy and trade with each other. And the principle is that everyone gets a seat at the table and everyone eats. That's what Ray Youssef calls it. And it's pretty interesting. So if you're into spreading adoption and helping these people that we like to virtue signal about, but we rarely actually help with getting access to more coins, then try trading on noans.com. And last but not least, there's Bitcoin.com news, which is the place where I go when I want more diverse stories and not just US politics or just institutions. And they're pretty cool. They're no longer the website that says that Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin and it's cheaper and faster and has lower fees and you should not use BTC. They have really good news coverage. They also covered Zcash and they asked me to write an article about it to explain what's happening, which I might, but I haven't had the time to write it. And I think I like their balanced approach. And they don't just have crypto markets, they also have gold and other geopolitical events from parts of the world that usually don't think about. So check out news.bitcoin.com. They're very cool. And thanks to all the sponsors. Now let's get to the questions. Actually, it became 5 questions in the meantime, but I'll take them in the right order. First one,
Sure.
Are you ready for the Zcash rare Pepe directory? Do you know what's a rare Pepe?
Nope.
You don't know. But
Nope.
you know what a Pepe is?
Yes.
The green frog. Basically,
Yeah.
the rare Pepe directory was created in 2015, 2016 on Bitcoin with people who issued tokens on Counterparty, which is sort of proto Ethereum that was built on Bitcoin. And it was supposed to tokenize real world assets back in 2014. It never was used for that. It actually became this place where people trade proto meme coins, which were tokens that represent Pepe's. And yeah, some people want to bring this to Zcash, but I don't know how that's gonna work. Like, it's a privacy chain. People are not gonna be able to see this. You're probably better off moving that to Solana. Anyway, that's the question. Are you ready for it or not?
Sure. I don't know what it is, but I'm ready.
Question number 2 from ZK Albai. What can we do about helping more merchants accept ZEC? At the moment, BTC Pay Server seems to be the best viable solution, and still it doesn't look seamless. I understand that ZEC is mostly seen as SOV, store of value, but this would be huge and something that only Zcash can do. Thanks for spreading the word of this incredible tech. So what can we do about helping more merchants accept Zcash?
I need to do some research here. Like, I need to understand what their blockers are, what their concerns are. I would say though, I mean, there's obviously that pay function where Zashi Wallet, where you can pay certain things, like, you know, Zuko famously paying for burritos. I would say, like, the immediate thing to do with this is, like, you know, obviously cross-chain stuff, but I do think you can, with light clients on Solana, what you can do is you can have your shielded ZEC in a shielded pool, which is private. You can use a proof to say, I own this much ZEC, or like greater than this much ZEC, mint some stable coins on like Solana, and then just use that for payment. So like it can actually work nicely with each other. But I need to do more research onto what the bottlenecks today are.
I think I spoke with one of the merchants that I really wanted to accept Zcash, and I know the guy. I'm not sure if I should name it because it's gonna trigger some people, but basically what he told me is that he's not sure at this point if Zcash really made a comeback or it's just a pump and dump. And I think the main roadblock in their minds is that they're not sure if this is gonna go back to $30 with very low activity, or they should invest their engineering power to support this. And I think there are 2
Well,
ways to counter this.
they shouldn't need to bill too much. Like, it should be done by Zcash people on their behalf, right? Like if Zcash people are serious, we need to build this on behalf of other people so they could just plug and play, right? We need to think in terms of like a product builder.
That would be nice, but at this point we have BTC Pay, so a lot of these services are actually using BTC Pay, and all they have to do is just add another coin. It's not that difficult. They don't have to run a node, as far as I know. Or maybe it's ideal if they do. So maybe
I mean, if it's just adding a new coin via an existing SDK, you either make like a PR on an open source repo that supports it, or the merchant just presses that one button, right? So like, I need to do more research into how that works first.
yeah, it's up to the merchant to decide this. It's part of the BTC Pay tech stack. They also support Monero and Bitcoin. But it does make me wonder because there needs to be more work towards helping people understand that this is sort of a new narrative for privacy and it's not just a pump and dump by VCs. And honestly, there are a lot of Monero people who are very much into spreading this misinformation and saying, well, it's gonna go back to $30. This is just a pump and dump. You should sell as quickly as you can. You should short it, whatever. I did tweet, I think, yesterday that shorts are basically jet fuel for whenever they get liquidated, the price is gonna go parabolically up. But yeah, it's a matter of perception, I think. What are your thoughts on privacy protocols emerging on Solana like ZK Sol? ZKL Sol? Or I'm not sure if it's a typo.
I think they might mean there was like a project that was going to go on MetaDAO, which is like a ICO platform now, where it's like a shielded mixer, but it's a liquid staking token. So like when you put the liquid staking token in the shielded pool, it earns yield from staking Sol, which I think is a good idea. That's actually an idea I had a few weeks ago that I wanted some other folks to add. So as far as what I think about privacy on Solana, I mean, I've funded angel invested into 5 of them, ranging from MPC to privacy exclusive wallets to private trading. So I would like to see more private Cypherpunk stuff on Solana for sure. And it's going to happen, and it is happening.
How much of Zcash's price rise is due to Monero's 51% attack in August? I would basically, I'll let you reply, but my answer to this is 0. I'm not sure what you think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty small, if anything. I would say like 0 to 1%. I don't think anyone gave a shit about that, to be honest. Because and like even if they did, you would be able to see the rotation from XMR to ZEC, and like I don't think I haven't looked at XMR's price, but I don't think it's necessarily went down significantly or anything.
There's also a question that says when Turkey, and I'm not sure what this means. If you're gonna travel to Turkey, if you're gonna eat turkey.
It's probably when am I gonna go to, because I'm Turkish. It's probably when am I gonna go to Turkey to get a hair transplant, is my guess. Well, I go to Turkey all the time. I'm not gonna disclose when, but I do. I am from there, so I do go random times throughout the year.
There's actually a question from someone who wants to participate the ZK hackathon, and he says, is a P2P Zcash market on and off fiat ramps like local bitcoins a good idea for the ZK hackathon or too basic?
Great idea. I don't think there's really any idea that's too basic. Most of the best companies end up being extremely basic ideas. Like look at Twitter. What is Twitter? Take some text and then press post. Like at least that's how it started. What is Messenger? It's message people. Like it's simple. The simpler the better, honestly.
I actually got some feedback / criticism. Someone doesn't like the way I present my ads. Sorry, man, this is the cost of getting stuff for free. Like, you're not paying anything to watch this. You're getting a lot of nice information. Do you really think Zcash can flip Cardano? I think yes, but will take some time. Bless you for shielding Zcash. And there's a shield and the whale. I guess this guy is flexing on us right now.
100%. I mean, there's zero doubt that Zcash can flip Cardano, and in my view, XRP. Like, look, it is embarrassing that those coins are higher than a project that has pioneered ZK, privacy, in the cypherpunk ideals of crypto. Like, they are literally, okay, I'm not going to talk too badly about them, but when you compare the technical achievements, the vision, and the impact on society, they are not comparable. And I do understand they do TikTok posting and crime better, but you know, I think we can come up with some good messaging, talent, and more technical work, and really make Zcash much more prevalent until those projects are in the hands of less dentists and Uber drivers, right? Which is going to wreck them at some point.
Isn't that sort of the moment when you're supposed to sell? When you take a Uber and you're just minding your own business, and then the driver says, hey, you know, I'm actually making more money than my day job just trading on this phone that I have right here. I just made like $300 yesterday, and I'm doing so good that I think I want to quit my job. Like, I think that's like the sell signal.
Yeah, everybody says that, but then you look at XRP and it's been in the top 3, top 4 for the past year. And certainly I've had a food delivery person talk to me about it. So, I don't do these top signal, sell signal, buy signal stuff. I just know that Zcash is undervalued relative to what is in front of it. And it is on men of taste, women of taste to correct that.
I 100% agree with you. At the same time, we have to admit that XRP, like, I do understand that there's this ongoing vendetta, right? Because for the longest time, XRP was supposed to. So, what was it that Solana did last week? It was something with. No, it was this week.
Western Union.
Western Union, exactly. So, XRP was trying to replace remittances and become like the coin that people use for this. And Solana has a deal with Western Union. I think at one point, like 6 years ago, there was a deal between XRP and MoneyGram. And they actually.
Stellar.
It was Stellar?
Stellar and XR, or Stellar and MoneyGram had an exclusivity deal recently. Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
There's this, I guess, ongoing fight between the two tribes, so it makes sense for you to disrespect XRP. But I do gotta give them credit because they have been very good at doing politics. And when most of Bitcoin mining was happening in China, they knew exactly how to talk to the US politicians to present themselves as the American alternative to Bitcoin and the technology that's actually not controlled by the Chinese. And they played this game very well. They tried to flood Bitcoin with that Greenpeace deal where they basically paid them for marketing campaigns against Bitcoin mining. And they've been very proactive. And nowadays they're trying to get under the skin of the Trump administration to say, we're producing fintech innovation that's decentralized and blah, blah, blah in the US. And they're playing this American card all the time. And I do understand why it's there. But at the same time, technically, it's not interesting. Like, they haven't, to my knowledge, like, prove me wrong. Just if you're an XRP or Ripple fan, just tell me in the comments that I'm wrong. But for so many years, they have been presenting the same old ideas, I guess, to a new wave of adopters. And they haven't improved in any significant way. It's just promises that they're going to do stuff like replace Swift or whatever. They never went anywhere. Nobody's using the XRP token, except for a bunch of guys who think it's going to $489, which used to be the meme. And I think it's massively centralized and overvalued. And it makes sense, actually, if there's going to be something that flips it, it should be something like Zcash that actually has meaning and actually has a purpose and a use case. Not just something which is getting overhyped on this geopolitical battle between countries. But I was going to ask you, you keep presenting these charts, like, how many X's does Zcash need right now to flip XRP? Like, what's the price going to be?
I think the last I looked, it would need to do a 23x and be about $9,000 per coin. I mean, look, I think it's an unserious project. I don't necessarily care to talk too much more about it. I think they have like 100 lobbyists and like 0 engineers, and the world needs engineers. And yeah, I mean, they are obviously good at psyops, but like when if one wants to argue tech and engineering, then it's good luck, right? So we're gonna flip it.
You got a lot of credit for the fact that there was this proposal for Zcash to migrate to proof of stake. And you sort of commented to Zuko's thread and you said that the market will solve this out and proof of work is part of the value proposition of what Zcash does. And I think it was even Josh Swihart who said, well, maybe that this is too early to actually be considered. And there's someone who's asking you, please ask Mert to put a thread together on how to vote proposals as ZEC holders so we can vote to stay proof of work or go proof of stake. Many don't know how or that it's even possible.
Oh, yeah, there needs to be some resources on how to do token holder voting. I think people will produce some of that as part of the hackathon. But yeah, I mean, I think the proposal to add like a proof of stake layer on top of Zcash, um, I don't agree with it. I think proof of work is core to the network currently, and I think like if you dive a little deeper, really people are concerned about security, and that's why they want to move to proof of or add proof of stake. But I think that is completely unnecessary. And I say this as the largest validator on Solana on a proof of stake network with 3 billion in capital. So like we know a thing or two about proof of stake validators. And I don't recommend Zcash does this. I think what needs to happen is one, free markets need to be added, and then two, as a result of that, because now there's better rewards, the miners compete to decentralize the hash power. And once you do that, then that solves the problem without requiring proof of stake and without potentially risking privacy and without adding these weird, tokenomics and all this stuff and making it more complex. And like you don't want to add extra risk at this point. You want to fix it in the simplest way possible. And like if you look at the hash dominance, it actually has been going down already. And I know people who are behind the scenes buying ASICs and mining equipment to help with that even more. But there's a shortage, so it takes like some time. So I think I'm going to be voting to stay proof of work personally. And yeah, we'll ask some resources on how to actually do it. I think it might be worked into Zashi so that it's super simple for people.
That would be actually amazing. And for people listening to this, like if you haven't tried Zashi ever, like it's a masterclass in user experience. It's so simple, but so powerful. Like
Yes.
just give it a try. I'm gonna get you onboarded. I'll send you like $5 so you can play with it. There's someone who's asking, what do you think of a disposable AI accepting Zcash as a payment method?
I mean, sure, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that'd be a fun project. Like if you can pay. I think one of the problems today, though, is that Zec doesn't necessarily have a good browser-based wallet. So like you need to use some weird mixture of mobile and desktop.
I think it
Um,
works with Brave browser.
yeah, the Brave one is has some issues that I've flagged to them, but it is better than nothing, obviously. I think, yeah, I mean, using Zach to pay AI would be fun. Like, sure, why not?
I actually want to answer to this that there is Nano-GPT, which is a project that lets you pay for every query that you make with a bunch of AIs that it has. Like you can use Grok or GPT, like ChatGPT or Claude or DeepSeek and all of these. And you can pay with shielded Zcash. They actually made this integration. Like it sort of already exists, but it's not exclusive to Zcash. It's actually made for Nano, the cryptocurrency, but they realized that they have a small community and network effect, so they started accepting all of these other coins. I know the guy who created this, and it's pretty cool. So if you want to pay with Zcash for your ChatGPT usage, and you only want to pay for what you use as opposed to $20 per month for a subscription, you can use, it's Nano-GPT, nano-gpt.com. They don't pay me for this. It's not an advertisement, but I think it's interesting. You got another question. What's your take on viewing Zcash as a global privacy hub, just like Solana is becoming a global liquidity hub? Every large cross-chain transfer will spend time in Zcash shielded pool, inherent demand to hold ZEC, a new monetary premium. And this comes from Madars or Madars.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, it depends on how it's done, right? So I do think the asset needs to be singular. So there was a proposal on like ZEC shielded assets, which would involve like stable coins and all these different things. And I think that's a bad idea. I think it needs to be a singular asset because you need to reduce the attack surface and information leakage surface. But that being said, yeah, like it's basically like a private Swiss vault where it just takes gold. It's in Switzerland, but you can take it from there and move it to other places depending on your need, right? So like the idea of messaging it as like the global privacy layer, I think that's a fun idea. I think like we can play around with it and see. I think it would probably welcome a lot of unwanted attention from regulators, right? Like if everybody from every chain is kind of just coming into ZEC to like clean their hands, but then getting out right away, is good at its job, that's probably inevitable at some point. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the correct framing long term. Yes.
Actually, let me repeat that because I was muted. I'm stupid. I muted myself in OBS. So, major reason for going to hybrid proof of stake on Zcash is to enable fast finality. Can you ask Mert what he thinks about this?
Yes. So you don't need proof of stake for this, right? Like it really depends on what you're trying to optimize for, but I'll give you an example. What you can do is you can reparameterize the proof of work, right? Like you can reduce the block size and the bandwidth and all these different things to get a different finality duration. So you can probably reduce Zcash finality using something like Ethereum's old proof of work model before they went to proof of stake, which I still think was a mistake, but whatever. You can just take that model and tweak parameters, and you can get like 12 to 15 second finality, which by the way, Solana is 12-second finality, right? Which many people don't know about, but like that is the case. And so you can certainly speed that up without doing proof of stake. And then you need to ask yourself, like, what exactly am I optimizing for? Am I trying to get like millisecond confirmation times? That's never going to happen with Zcash. Like it's just never going to happen. And you need to ask yourself, okay, like if it's the Swiss vault and it's like, there's like L2s on top of it, and maybe you can use lifelines on Solana. Do you actually need anything below like 12 seconds? And I would say no. And again, like low latency is literally our entire specialty. Like that's exactly what my company does. And I think this would severely hurt Zcash's value prop because like you're not going to compete with the other kids by being faster than them. It's never going to happen. You want to get to a place that's good enough, but still focuses on the core value prop of the chain, which is privacy, security, digital gold, all these different things.
I like this answer. I actually want to ask you for the record if you looked into DAGs, because I see them as being interesting. It's quite a research that's been going for a few years, and the ones that we got, I think, are IOTA and Caspa and something that's called Quai.
Yeah.
And they do promise to have very fast finality and proof of work.
Yes. I mean, I did do a lot of work on DAGs in college, like math work. I think they are interesting, and I'm not like opposed to them, but I would let that experiment run on different chains first, because like, you know, the way to think about Zcash in my view right now is like, again, everything goes back to like the store value Swiss vault analogy, which is to say, if proof of work secures trillions in value on Bitcoin, then the way you're going to convince others to store their wealth on Zcash is by giving them the same risk parameters, right? If you're introducing additional uncertainty, additional cognitive variability, where they have to like think like, oh wait, but like this is not actually like Bitcoin, it's like this other thing, it's not really been tried before, that's going to make the job much, much harder, and you might actually end up not succeeding at all. And again, you want to make things as simple as possible, and then only introduce complexity if you need it. You want to be taking things away. Like there's like that meme of Elon Musk's rockets, like Raptor 1, Raptor 2, Raptor 3, and you can see it keeps getting simpler, simpler, and simpler. That's exactly what you want.
I agree with you. And for the record, we started this when it was midnight for Mert. So I don't want to keep him for too long. Like, I feel like I'm already abusing his time and maybe he has stuff to do in the morning. So I will take just one more question from the audience and it's gonna go to the highest bidder. And with this high bid, I'm gonna split it with Mert. So basically, if you send us one ZEC or something, I'm gonna share it with you because you're giving us your time. So far, people have sent me like 0.001, most of them, for the question. I do want to ask you because I have two questions. One is serious and one is not. The serious one is, what do you actually do at Helios Labs? Like, I never really asked you this directly, and I feel like it's fair to give you this opportunity to talk about your day job, quote unquote. And secondly, what do you mean when you talk about Zillions? What does that even mean?
What do I do? So Helios is RPCs. I think people are probably familiar with RPCs. RPCs, node infrastructure, APIs, data, and trading infrastructure for Solana. So we power everybody from Coinbase to Phantom to anybody who uses Solana. They use us for data, infrastructure, developer work. And I'm the CEO of that company. And then we actually just released a block explorer as well, orb.helios.dev. And yeah, I mean, we basically are trying to be the API for internet markets, right? Like if you want to build on internet markets, trade or borrow land, all these different things, you would use our APIs and infrastructure. What do I mean Zillions? Well, I mean, yeah, I just, there was this, I think people are super pessimistic crypto for no reason. I like, Bitcoin is like the only $1 trillion asset in crypto right now. And, you know, Solana's 100 billion, ZEC is not even close to that. And it's like, look, if you actually believe in crypto, if you actually think it will engulf the internet and all economies and finance and value and trading, then like the current market caps are a joke, right? Like, why are you spending all your time here 24/7? And I'm spending all my efforts and energy and time and hair and everything. If I did not believe that the industry would reach trillions of value, right? Like this is low-hanging fruit that we can absolutely get to. And so in some sense, it's like a jab at that. But in the less serious sense, it's like, you know, let's keep going. Let's just keep going. Like that's really all it's about.
Do you honestly believe we're gonna reach maybe past the previous all-time high for Zcash, which I think at the time, during the first couple of days of the network launching, when the supply was low and it's proof of work, people were trading multiple Bitcoins for one ZEC. And that's why the price is like above two. I don't even know how much that is. It depends on the exchange, but it's like $3,000-$4,000 in the first few days. And people point out that it went down so massively. Do you think we're gonna go past that during this cycle, or do you think that maybe $1,000 is more conservative?
I would say over a long enough time horizon, certainly we'll go over that. Yes. I don't know. I can't control macro. I don't know what Trump will do. I don't know what Russia will do. I don't know what China will do. All these different things. But when the world reaches equilibrium and you factor in a long time horizon, I don't see how it doesn't get there.
There are two questions that came after I announced that there's gonna be one last one. Unfortunately, the one with the highest bid is also slightly dumber than the other one. I think the other one is more interesting, but I have to respect the rules, guys. The other person who sent me 0025 ZEC, you can ask me for a refund. Send me a message on Twitter. So this guy says, can we make memes about Maduro or other dictators leaving power with a bag of ZEC? Or is that more Monero marketing vibes?
Yeah, I would not recommend that. I don't think that would be good. I think that's surely more Monero. I think the way to think about, because privacy marketing is like a very finicky thing. You don't want to market it like for edgelords and crime. You want to market it towards individual liberty and like the machinery of freedom, that sort of thing.
For the record, this was for 0.033 ZEC, so I owe you like 0016 something, 65.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you want to take this last one or should we wrap it up?
Sure. Let's take one more.
Okay. Can you give some color on what feedback you got when onboarding major projects to Zcash? What did they like the most or what were their concerns?
I think a lot of people just don't know how this stuff works. Like, most people aren't even aware that it's like a Bitcoin-esque thing. They don't even know if it's a proof of work thing. They don't know if it uses ZK. Like, there's just a lot of baseline knowledge that is missing. So like the takeaway is that I hope everybody does more advocating and informed, educational, and useful content. Right? Preferably it's code. Preferably you build things. But if not, obviously not everybody's a coder. Write, do podcasts, whatever. Just help in any way you can, so that the probability of success for the future increases.
Last question for you before I let you go. How do you see the top 5 or top 10 in the next few years? Like, which are the coins which you think are gonna be there, up there in the top?
Bitcoin, Solana, ZAC. I could see Hyperliquid getting there. And then, I mean, the fifth one, probably depending on the time horizon, it's going to be most likely ETH, obviously. So, I mean, I think that's probably the safest bet. I mean, like, look, I think the Zcash one is probably a little heretical to some people, but I don't really see a reason why it can't happen.
I agree with you. There's no reason for this not happening unless, we don't believe in it and we fought it for many years. And to be fair, Zcash has had a very terrible history. Like, it was sort of cursed from the beginning to have bugs and then like PR disasters, and they just had to roll with all of this for 9 years, and now it's finally to the point where we wanted it from the beginning. Like, it's what we were promised 3,000 years ago.
Yep.
That's the
All right.
worst meme I've ever seen. I'll let you go, Mert. Is there any closing message or something that you want to tell to the listeners, where to follow you or stuff like this?
No, I mean, you'll probably see my your feed if you don't, unless you've muted me. I guess call to action would be if you're a builder, pay attention. Cypherpunk hackathon coming soon, and then otherwise, help us write, research, advocate, spread the word about privacy, Zcash, zero knowledge, all the cool stuff, and then let's have some fun.
Thank you very much for your time, Mert, and I hope that we're gonna do this again whenever the price goes up massively and we're gonna be like, man, we were so right. And just for the listeners, the price is at 399 for 0.40, so still not above 400, so I'm not gonna do the dance. Maybe next time.
All
So
right. Thanks for having me.
Bye to everyone. Thanks to the sponsors once again. NoOnes.com, SideShift.ai, Bitcoin.com news, and Layer 2 Labs. I'll see you in the next one.